Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We are continuing our look at how AI is really shifting gears, moving from, interesting proof of concept tools into what you could call true infrastructure level technologies. Stuff that's going to define the next, 5 years?
Easily. We're talking foundational changes.
Exactly. This isn't just faster software. It's about fundamentally rebuilding how entire industries operate. We've already looked at big shifts like foundation model as a service for computing and self-supervised robotics in the physical world.
Both huge leaps.
And today, we hit number 6 on our list. And this one, it promises to radically speed up human health research, completely changing how medicines are found. We're diving into AI-driven drug discovery platforms with closed-loop lab automation.
Yeah, this is a big one. But for you listening, our mission here is pretty clear. We need to get past the buzzwords, really understand the mechanics, how this closed-loop thing actually works, this self-optimizing cycle.
Yeah.
But maybe more importantly, we need to map out the impact, the real quantifiable effect it's going to have on R&D speed and cost, of course.
And the challenges, right?
Well,
because it sounds almost too good to be true sometimes.
Definitely. And finally, because the promise is so big, we absolutely have to look critically at the hurdles, the technical, the financial, even the societal challenges that need solving before this becomes, standard practice everywhere, not just in a few leading labs.
It really sounds like the ultimate team up. AI provides the brain power designing these complex, high-stakes experiments, while robotics handles let's say, the heavy lifting, executing them perfectly around the clock.
It's a research cycle that literally never sleeps, and it's always getting smarter.
And the timeline seems incredibly fast for this kind of revolution.
It's kind of breathtaking, actually. Our sources are saying the proof of concept phase for these whole end-to-end systems, it's happening right now, basically 2025 through 2026.
So we're in it.
We're in it. And the expectation is that by, say, 2027 to 2029, these closed-loop platforms won't just be, common. They'll actually be part of the regulated pipelines, the official process for approving new drugs.
Wow. That's lightning speed for pharma, an industry known for being, cautious.
Extremely fast.
Okay, so let's unpack that core idea, the closed-loop lab automation system. When we say a lab runs itself, what does that actually look like day to day? How does that end-to-end process flow? The continuous feedback part sounds crucial.
That continuity, that's everything. Think of it like a relentless research robot working in 4 stages. It's fundamentally this pipeline, right? Connecting the digital world, the computation, with the physical world of chemistry.
Yeah, stage 1.
Stage 1 is the creative bit. This is where you have advanced generative AI models trained on just vast amounts of data, proposing new molecular structures, one specifically designed to hit certain biological targets.
The AI is the brainstormer here, coming up with molecules a human might just never think of.
Exactly that. Then stage 2 is planning. Once the AI flags a promising structure, other AI models, the synthesis planners, they take over. They basically act like a robotic project manager. Yeah, they schedule and coordinate every single tiny precise step the robots need to take in the lab to actually build that molecule the first AI proposed.
Got it. Design, then plan. What's stage 3?
Stage 3 is execution. The robots get to work. They run what are called high-throughput assays. Basically, for anyone not in a lab coat, think of running thousands of tiny, tiny experiments all at the same time.
Okay.
And these tests show exactly how well that proposed molecule performs against the target. Does it work? Is it stable? Things like that.
Right. And then stage 4 must be the closed loop part, the feedback. That sounds like the real departure from just, automating tasks.
Precisely. That's what makes it closed loop. The results from those experiments, the data on whether the assay worked or failed, it's immediately automatically fed right back into the original generative AI model.
Without a person needing to step in.
No human intervention needed to interpret the data, write it up, manually figure out the next experiment. The system learns from its own results, successes, and failures in real time. It allows for incredibly rapid iteration, self-correction.
That just speeds up the learning curve massively, doesn't it? If an AI can iterate based on results every few hours instead of using weeks for a human team, you basically collapse the time it takes to optimize a potential drug candidate.
That's the core mechanism driving the whole value proposition. And this whole idea, this autonomous research system, it's picked up some cool names. People call it a self-driving lab, or maybe more descriptively, lab in the loop. It's built for speed, yes, but really it's designed for exponential velocity.
Okay, so this is where things get really interesting, thinking about the impact. We're all used to drug R&D, meaning these incredibly long timelines, billions of dollars spent.
The classic model.
If these end-to-end AI pipelines become the norm, how much does that actually change the timeline? And maybe just as importantly, the success rate?
The source material we looked at is remarkably aggressive on this. The numbers suggest that putting these complete iterative pipelines in place could cut early-stage R&D time by, wait for it, more than 50%.
More than half. Half the initial development cycle just gone. Let's try and put that into perspective. Where does that huge chunk of time usually go in the traditional process, and how is the AI cutting it out?
Well, it mostly goes into that iterative trial and error, right?
Yeah.
The sort of manual synthesis, purification, testing, figuring out what the results mean, planning the next step, rinse and repeat.
Right, the slow, human-driven loop.
Exactly. Currently, just finding a viable starting point, that early-stage candidate identification, that averages about 18 months of really intensive work. With this closed-loop system, the projections are that shrinks dramatically, down to maybe just 6 to 9 months.
6 to 9 months instead of 18. Wow.
But the speed isn't even the whole story, maybe not even the most revolutionary part. The real game changer could be how these systems are building failure prevention right into the very beginning, the design phase.
You mean the manufacturability forecasting stuff?
Yeah.
Walk us through that, because preventing dead ends years down the road sounds, well, incredibly valuable.
Precisely. Think about the old way. A brilliant chemist might design what looks like a perfect molecule on paper or in early tests. But then maybe 5 years later, when you try to scale it up for mass production, you find out it's unstable, or it's just ridiculously expensive to make, or needs some super rare ingredient. That's a huge failure. Millions, sometimes billions, down the drain on a promising drug that just couldn't be made practical.
Okay, I see the problem.
So what's fascinating now is that advanced AI models are being built specifically to forecast that stuff, the manufacturability, the scalability, right back at the initial design stage. The system asks not just, does this molecule work biologically, but also, okay, realistically, can we make millions of doses of this affordably and reliably?
So it weeds out the potential failures much, much earlier.
Exactly. By predicting the technical viability way up front, the overall chance of any new drug candidate actually making it all the way through the pipeline goes up significantly. It lowers the inherent risk baked into the whole process.
Hey, this really changes the economics then, doesn't it? It's not just about going faster, it's about failing less often, or at least failing cheaper and earlier. It's like designing something in, CAD software that the factory can actually build.
That's a great analogy.
Instead of just crossing your fingers with a prototype after you've already sunk a ton of money into it.
Yeah.
Which brings us to that kind of dual impact you mentioned.
Yeah.
Cost reduction, obviously, but also this idea of democratization. How does that work?
That's right. So when you automate large parts of the design and the lab execution, and you simultaneously increase the success rate of the candidates you do pursue, well, you significantly reduce the need for those very large traditional medicinal chemistry teams doing lots of repetitive optimization work.
Fewer chemists needed for the routine stuff.
Fewer needed for the high-volume screening and iterative testing, yeah. Which means the operational cost associated with that drops dramatically. And that's where the democratization angle comes in.
Yeah.
Smaller startups, university research groups, outfits that previously just couldn't afford the massive infrastructure and the huge payroll needed for those years-long, large-scale R&D campaigns. Now they can potentially access this kind of high-velocity capability. It starts to level the playing field, allowing fresh perspectives and smaller players to genuinely compete with the established giants.
If we're talking about leveling the playing field, democratizing innovation, that immediately makes me think about market trust and scalability. I mean, if this is such a radical change, is the market buying in? Is there confidence? And maybe more technically, can this actually scale beyond just a few specialized high-tech labs?
Yeah.
Do all the robots and software bits talk to each other properly?
Yeah, good questions. The market response seems really robust, actually. Investment in AI-powered drug discovery is projected to climb considerably over the next few years. That signals pretty strong trust that the tech will deliver, eventually provide a solid ROI. Companies aren't just experimenting anymore. They're making real substantial bets.
Okay, so the money's flowing in. What about the tech integration part, making it scalable?
Right. And dealing with that integration challenge is absolutely key to scaling this up. The leading companies are already adopting and pushing these platforms forward because the basic idea, the lab in the loop, is kind of naturally built to scale if you have standardized components.
Standardization.
Yeah.
The classic hurdle.
Exactly. To make integration easier across different labs that often use totally different brands of robots, instruments, software, we're seeing technical standards evolving quite fast. Things like modular systems, scalable designs, and especially open APIs.
Open APIs, like a universal plug, basically.
Pretty much. Think of it as a standard way for different pieces of hardware and software to talk to each other, share data smoothly, no matter who manufactured them. Makes it much easier to plug and play.
So getting those standards widely adopted is maybe the main bottleneck between these exciting proofs of concept and truly widespread infrastructure level use.
It's a huge part of it, yes. This whole shift really demands much tighter cooperation between the hardware guys, the robot makers, and the software developers writing the sophisticated AI that runs the show. They have to work hand in glove to ensure that true plug-and-play capability. But the potential payoff, predicting manufacturability, scaling up candidates in a fraction of the time, it's just too big to ignore. They'll figure it out.
Okay. We painted this picture of incredible efficiency, huge speed gains, maybe even a more level playing field for innovation. But as you hinted, the sources we looked at aren't all positive. What are the big roadblocks, the major technical, financial, maybe even regulatory hurdles that have to be cleared before this gets adopted broadly across the whole pharma world?
Right, let's get into the challenges. We identified 5 main ones from the research, and they're pretty critical for understanding the real effort involved here. They're definitely not trivial.
Go ahead, number 1.
First up, regulatory validation. This might be the biggest, most fundamental hurdle. Agencies like the FDA, their whole job is ensuring safety and reliability, often through careful audits.
Right. They need to see the work.
Exactly. So if an AI is constantly tweaking and optimizing a drug candidate on its own, how do you audit its logic? Regulators are going to demand transparent provenance. They need to be able to see the AI's notebook, so to speak. Not just the final drug structure, but how exactly the AI arrived at its decisions, especially anything impacting patient safety.
That sounds like a real point of friction. If part of the AI's power is its slightly opaque, black box learning process, how do you build regulatory trust in a system designed to minimize human oversight?
That's the core tension, isn't it? These systems need to be designed from the ground up with regulatory transparency in mind, which leads right into the second challenge, which is related: safety. Plain old safety.
How so?
Well, a big concern with a lab running itself, maybe overnight, unsupervised, is making sure the complex chemical synthesis steps the robots are performing don't accidentally create some highly dangerous intermediate compound without a human noticing. Safety protocols have to be absolutely rock solid, built into the infrastructure, totally fail-safe.
Okay, regulatory and safety. What's third?
Third is high costs and return on investment, ROI. We talked about democratization, but the flip side is the reality check. The huge upfront investment needed for the latest automation robots, the sophisticated AI software licenses, the cloud computing power, it's really expensive.
That sounds like a classic market friction point. If the tech is meant to help smaller players, don't those massive upfront costs actually create a new, maybe even higher barrier to entry? How do they get over that initial hump?
That's the central financial dilemma. Yes, the long-term savings from needing less manual lab work and having fewer failed drug projects could be massive, but smaller and maybe mid-sized companies often find it really hard to justify that initial capital spend. Demonstrating a clear, quick ROI is tough. So that financial barrier definitely slows down adoption outside the really big pharma companies who can just absorb the cost.
Makes sense. What's number 4?
Number 4 is all about the fuel for the AI. Data quality and fragmentation. AI models, especially for something this complex, need incredibly high-quality, standardized, clean data to work reliably. You know the saying, the models are only as good as the data you feed them.
And I'm guessing decades of research data scattered across thousands of different labs using different methods, different record keeping, isn't exactly standardized?
You guessed it. Unfortunately, many labs have data that's fragmented, inconsistent, maybe poorly documented, stored in isolated silos. Without a really major effort to unify and standardize data practices and infrastructure across the whole industry, these AI models will struggle to give consistently reliable, repeatable results at scale. Garbage in, garbage out, even with the smartest AI.
Okay, data quality. That leaves the 5th challenge.
The fifth one is about people, talent and change management. These closed-loop platforms need truly diverse teams working together seamlessly. You need biologists, chemists, data scientists, robotics engineers, all speaking the same language metaphorically. It's a fundamental shift in how lab work gets done.
Like integrating IT deeply into the lab itself.
Exactly. It reminds me a bit of the big shifts in manufacturing decades ago. You're not necessarily replacing the chemist, but you are changing their job, automating the most tedious parts, maybe. But right now, we face a shortage of people skilled in all these cross-disciplinary areas. Plus, you need significant training for existing staff. And managing that cultural change, it all inevitably slows down widespread deployment. You need folks who are comfortable talking about both, say, protein folding and Python.
That was an incredible overview. We started with this really dazzling promise, cutting a key drug discovery cycle from 18 months down to maybe 6 or 9.
Right.
And now we've walked through the very complex 5-part reality of making that kind of infrastructure shift happen. The technical hurdles, the financial ones, the regulatory piece, they're all very real. But the potential seems so enormous that the market is clearly pushing hard to overcome them.
Absolutely. And if we just connect this back for a second to the bigger infrastructure story we're tracking in this series, while today was all about drug discovery, think back to what we discussed with continuous learning digital assistants.
Yeah.
The way those assistants could potentially harness, the sum total of human knowledge, that directly feeds into making systems like this closed-loop platform even more powerful. This isn't just about finding one new drug faster. It's about building a fundamentally new engine for scientific discovery itself. So despite all the challenges we just laid out, the possibilities, accelerating human knowledge, improving health so dramatically, they really are, dazzling.
Dazzling is the word. So here's a final thought to leave everyone with. If AI really does start to democratize biotech innovation, partly by reducing that reliance on huge, expensive medicinal chemistry teams, how is that fundamental shift going to change the regulatory landscape, the actual rules of the game, the auditing expectations? What will that look like in, say, the next 3 years? Something to mull over until our next deep dive.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep. Thank you for listening to today's podcast. Please feel free to click on the link in the description below to discover more podcasts.